Hello, and welcome to the third and final part of the message series that I've called The Logic of Sacrifice. If you missed part one and part two, I recommend after watching this message, you either go to the videos on R120 Ministries Facebook page or R120 Ministries YouTube channel to watch them so you can catch up. While you're there, don't forget to follow or subscribe to catch new messages and videos as they are posted. However, with all the messages being connected, I think you'll be okay and understand today's message as we explore our sacrifice for others. I'm going to just jump right in, and I ask you to bear with me for just a few minutes or so I can lay some groundwork, but I promise we'll get there. For me, this has been one of the crazier weeks since the start of the social distancing, the isolation, and the shutdown of non-essential businesses. First, it's been a tough week mentally and emotionally for me. I guess I hit a wall on Wednesday. Circumstances just culminated to a point where I felt like, what is the point? I'll be the first to admit that none of the circumstances were horrible. There are people in way worse circumstances and situations than myself. Thankfully, Laura and I have not been sick. None of my family has been gravely ill or had to go to the hospital. I just had a moment, more like a day of frustration. Perhaps some background, and maybe you will be able to relate or at least understand. I had been the pastor of a non-denominational Christian church that I started along with a group of great Christians. It was active for 12 years, and it closed in July of 2018. Yes, it still pains me to think about the closing, especially as the anniversary of the decision to close is rapidly approaching. But after some time in prayer and reflection, I had a feeling that God was not done with me, so I decided to start R120 Ministries, which became incorporated and ready to hit the ground running at the beginning of this year. Obviously, not the best timing. Must trust in God's timing, but not when I would have timed it, and not easy to start and get something going in the middle of a pandemic. In response, I have tried to quickly establish offerings online for the ministry. This whole thing was supposed to start months from now. We had the planning and the outline for things to happen not so quickly. But we have tried to do our best given the situation. Along with this, I have my own business called Axiom Coaching. I am an executive leadership development coach and a business consultant. Like so many small businesses, my business has been heavily impacted by the policies put in place. There's only me at Axiom Coaching, so like the ministry, I have been trying to adapt and adjust my services to be online, to be remote. Not an easy task when there's just me. Also just a little pressure to get it done when business is slowing down to almost a halt. I know I'm not unique or alone, as others are in the same situation. Then add a few more things like a leaking sink and a leaking faucet, being confined to the house, not being able to talk to my mother this week who has Alzheimer's and is in memory care, along with about 20 other small things that have happened in the last few weeks and few days. Like I said, nothing I've listed or said is horrible or unique. In fact, as I'm speaking through the list right now, I was thinking to myself, really? This is what made me have a day where I hit an emotional wall. Who knows? I guess it was just enough to be that moment, that day. That moment where sometimes we break mentally and emotionally. Have you had your moment yet? Maybe you haven't. Or maybe you have had multiple moments over the past few weeks. Hopefully you've been able to bounce back. Luckily and thankfully, I was able to bounce back. The next day, through prayer and what I heard people say to me supportively, people speaking and what they said through our Bible study, our video Bible study, all very encouraging. And realizing what was really important. My health, my wife, house is still standing. We have food. However, I think many people are starting to reach the breaking point. That is what made this week seem a little crazier than the past weeks. And why do I say that I think people are reaching the breaking point? Well, it's just watching the news, social media. People are protesting social distancing and isolation. And now there's discussion about reopening businesses and organizations. I mean, we've all heard the government officials talking about reopening the businesses for the country, for reopening the economy. It's been on the news and on their daily briefings. I don't know about you, but I've also seen many discussions about reopening the country, reopening the economy, so to speak, on various social media platforms. I will admit, I'm not sure why this discussion is even happening. Why is it even being considered to do this? I wasn't sure until my little emotional breakdown. That and watching a show. Well, to confess, binge watching a show. And to really confess, and please don't judge me, the show is Naked and Afraid. If you're not familiar with the show, it's a show where it's a reality show, where they drop two people, sometimes more, into the most inhospitable environment you can think of. Even people who live around these environments say nobody goes into these areas to survive. So they drop them in naked to see if they can survive, pretty much just with their survival skills and not much else, for 21, maybe even sometimes in some cases 40 days. They do blur out the naked parts, and it's almost like they're wearing some clothing. It doesn't really become a big factor. I'm not even sure why they have to be completely naked. I'm sorry, I'm getting off track here, and I digress. The point is, though, that while watching the show and watching these survival challenges, all the survivalists seem to have a point, a moment, where they break emotionally and mentally. And then there are the moments in the challenge when that survival instinct just seems to kick in. You see the true nature of self-preservation kick in. It's a point where the others, they don't matter. And it's all about their own personal survival, their own personal needs. Are we getting there as a society? Are we getting to our breaking point, our mental and emotional breaking point? Are we getting to the breaking point mentally and emotionally where the idea that we need to reopen schools and businesses is prevailing? The point where our needs for survival are economic needs are beginning to outweigh the health needs of others. I'm simply asking the question. I'm not saying I know what is right or what is wrong. I'm simply asking the question in order to consider a concept. And the concept is our sacrifice for others. For Christians, we have two simple commands Jesus gave us. Two simple commands that we are to live our lives. The first is, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. We talked about this last week with our sacrifice for God. The second is found in a couple of the Gospels, and I'm going to go to the account recorded by the Apostle John. In John 15, verses 12 through 13, it is recorded, and this is Jesus saying, "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend." Love each other as I have loved you. Well, as we have seen from the past couple of weeks, this means to love unconditionally. Not, I will love you only because you love me. Not, I will love you only when it is convenient and easy for me. Not, I will love you only if my needs are met. Unconditional love means I will love you. Well, with no conditions, no rules, no expectation of receiving anything in return for the love I give. This kind of love is the love Christians are to possess. It is the love of Christ in us, which means we are to love enough in order to lay down our life for another. Now, when Jesus said this, I believe he meant it more than just loving someone enough to actually die for them, even though that is what Jesus did. But I believe it meant more than that. It meant another way in which we are to lovingly sacrifice our lives for others. Again, I go to the Apostle John, who explains this in one of the letters he wrote. 1 John 3:16 through 19. We know what real love is because Jesus gave up his life for us. So we also ought to give up our lives for our brothers and sisters. If someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need but shows no compassion, how can God's love be in that person? Dear children, let's not merely say we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions. Our actions will show that we belong to the truth, so we will be confident when we stand before God. Our sacrifice for others is our lives, not so much in our death, but in the way we live. Our unconditional love through our faith should drive our loving sacrifice. A loving sacrifice of our time, our emotional support and encouragement, our physical support, encouragement when possible, a little bit harder now with social distancing, and our financial support, which is probably the hardest. We are to give selflessly and sacrificially from true love of others, just as Jesus gave. Jesus not only died for us, but as we discovered in the first part of our series, God's sacrifice for us, Jesus gave all of himself. He made a great sacrifice by just leaving heaven and coming to earth to be man. He gave up everything, including his life, for us. For us, I believe it's easier for us to say we would die for someone than it is to truly, lovingly live for them. Because living for others means repeatedly and consistently putting the needs of others first. And to do that, to live this way, is hard. To live this way when our own survival, our own needs, our own comfort, our own finances, our own way of life becomes threatened or is threatened, it becomes even harder. Real unconditional love takes real unconditional actions. So what are your actions saying about your love for others? What are your actions saying about your faith, about Christ living in you? Therefore, as a Christian, I do not understand what would drive the desire to reopen businesses and risk increasing the spread of the virus, the risk of making people suffer, the risk of ending someone's life. Am I concerned about my business and if it will survive? And if it doesn't survive, what will I do? Will I be able to find a job, employment? Yes, I am concerned. I am working almost 7 days a week to try and adjust my business model to the new way of doing business remotely, which may have led a little to the emotional breakdown this past week. Am I concerned about our finances? How long our money will last? Well, yeah, again, little emotional breakdown this past week. And those are just a few of the concerns that have been weighing at the top of the list. Few of the concerns I have about all the unknowns we are facing. I don't know, do they sound familiar to your concerns? Well, for me, besides going to God with my concerns and finding relief in my faith and putting my trust in Him, I realized this about my concerns. They're mine. They're all about me. I also realized that there is a bigger question, a bigger concern. Do my concerns, my business, my needs outweigh the safety of those who might get infected? Do my comforts, my needs outweigh the comfort and needs of those who might suffer from contracting the virus? Outweigh those who may die from the virus? Do my needs outweigh those who will lose someone they love to the virus? The only answer as a Christian and with the love of Christ in me is a resounding no. One life is too much of a sacrifice. One person's suffering is too much. Christ lived and died to show us this, for He still would have done everything He did just for one person, just for you. Can't we do the same for each other? Are you willing to sacrifice for others as Christ sacrificed for you? Are you willing to love others by giving of your life, by living for others, by living for them, sacrificing your time, comfort, needs, money? And perhaps if we all truly lived this way, if we lived sacrificially for each other, we would not need to be concerned. For if we needed food, we would ask, and it would be sent to us. If we needed someone to listen and encourage us, we would call, and there would be someone to truly hear us. If we needed help to pay our bills We would tell others, and everyone would have their bills paid. This week, I ask you, this week, how can you help others during the crisis? How can you love sacrificially? Maybe giving your time, your money, giving of yourself. I pray that we as Christians will live out the logic of sacrifice, knowing God's sacrifice for us, knowing our sacrifice for God, and our sacrifice for others is all born out of unconditional and sacrificial love. A love that cannot help but sacrifice one's own needs, one's own life for the needs of others. I pray that in the days, weeks, months, and years that follow, during this crisis, after it has passed, and in the crises that may follow, we will always live for others. So, my brothers and sisters, I say to you, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions. Our actions will show that we belong to the truth. We belong to Christ Jesus. This message series was supposed to be the series that launched our 120 Ministries, especially one part of it that we're calling Acts of Random Kindness. Acts of Random Kindness is a carryover from the previous church that I talked about earlier in this message. There are acts that are small to us but could be big to those who receive them. They are acts born out of sacrificial love and the love of Christ in us that compels us to live out a life of love for others. I know it will be tougher now to do these acts of random kindness with social distancing and isolation, but I'm sure that we can get creative. If you're out grocery shopping to pick up some essentials, maybe just buy a gift certificate for $5 or $10 and place it in the mailbox of someone you know who needs some things, but they're unemployed right now. Or go online and buy a gift certificate, print it out, and put it in the mailbox. Instead of using an email or a text, actually call someone to connect with them, to let them know that they're not alone. In the weeks to come, I hope that we can formally launch the website for our 120 Ministries, God willing. And there you can find out more about acts of random kindness. But until then, I'm sure that the love of Christ will compel you in ways to show your love. I hope you enjoyed this message series and found it spiritually uplifting. If you did, please like and follow R120 Ministries on Facebook. Subscribe to the R120 Ministries YouTube channel. And also, we have started our live video Bible study via Zoom. The topic of study is prayer. There is still time for you to join in, and if you would like to join us, just click the Visit Group button on our Facebook page for more details. And of course, I hope you'll join us, especially next week, when there will be a new message, hopefully a message of hope, faith, spiritual uplifting, and encouragement for you. God bless, be well, be safe, and remember, not only does God love you, but I love you because of Christ in me, and there is nothing you can do about it. Have a great week.